Hi, y'all. Today we're going to talk about yarn and supplies. But first, I want to talk about yarn and the different way yarn presents itself in various shapes. So you're probably most familiar with the ball of yarn, which is literally a round mass of yarn and it looks like a ball. So it's called a ball of yarn, literally. Now, a skein of yarn is yarn that's been winded into an oblong oval bundle, and it's ready to use from the store to your home for your knitting, crocheting, and other fiber crafts. This is probably the most common shape of yarn that you will see. Now, if you're going to a higher end yarn shop or even to a local supplier, you may see yarn in this orientation, and this is called a hank. And a hank is just yarn which has been loosely wound into a large ring, and then to make packaging easier, it's been twisted. So it has kind of that braid look, but all you have to do is untwist the hank and you'll get that ring again, and then you can roll it up into a ball or into a cake sort of shape. Now, a skein is usually considered 1/6 of a hank. Not always, but it's kind of a good rule of thumb in regards to yardage and the amount of yarn between the hank and the skein. Okay, so let's talk basic supplies. Obviously, we want a crochet hook. We'll talk about that in just a second. But you also want a good set of yarn scissors, a tape measure, and plastic looking safety pins called stitch markers. And for those trivia fans, I thought I'd talk to you a little bit about crochet hook anatomy. Now, the crochet hook is broken into two sections, the head and the body. Now, the head is broken up into two more sections called the throat and the shaft. And the body is broken into two sections called the thumb rest and the handle. Now, the crochet hook sizes vary. The larger or further into the alphabet you get, the larger the hook. Here in the States, we tend to see sizes based on letters. So J is going to be larger than a C hook. So now let's learn how to read a yarn label. All the information that you want about your yarn is going to be on the paper strip that wraps around your yarn. Now, every yarn company is going to do it a little differently. Here I'm showing you two different yarn companies, Lion Brand and Rowan, and they have slightly different formats on how they're presenting the same information. So there's going to be 8 categories that every yarn label is going to have. The first will be yarn weight category, and this is a number system to determine the bulkiness or lack of bulkiness of the yarn. So a 6 category would be a very bulky yarn, whereas a 1 or a 2 would be lace weight or a fingerling. This would be a very thin yarn. So then we have the actual weight of the skein of yarn, and then we have the yardage. The gauge is really important because it lets the crocheter or the knitter know the size of hook or needles to be used. If you ignore the gauge and you're trying to follow a pattern, you may not have the success you are looking to achieve. So it's really important to follow the gauge rule. So then we have the fiber content of the yarn, the care instructions, the yarn brand and the yarn name, and then the color and dye lot. Now, it's really important that when you're working with multiple skeins of yarn of the same color, that the dye lot number is the same. If it's not, then sometimes there is a slight variation in the color that's being used. So you want to make sure that when you're working on a project with multiple skeins of the same color yarn, the dye lot is all the same. Okay, future crocheters, that was part 1, Crochet Beginnings. We examined yarn and supplies, we talked crochet hook anatomy and how to read a yarn label. In the next video, we will continue our crochet beginnings and explore the slip knot and the chain stitch. These are our baby basics, and we need to understand them before we can start making our beautiful projects. Okay, until next time.